Welcome to the Todd DeVoe Show, exploring the best ideas and lessons for leaders.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're at. And today I'm really excited because, I always use like football analogies and stuff like this when we're talking about emergency management. And today, we're talking about Super Bowl. So, before we get into today's show, I want to thank Buffalo Computer Graphics. Since 2002, Buffalo Computer Graphics, D-Land, Disaster Land, Emergency Management Solutions has helped teams across the United States and Canada prepare for, respond to, and report on emergencies. So D-Land's secure web-based tools are extremely intuitive, and their automated custom system workflows reduce data entry and error. With D-Land, any organization can easily track, manage, and report multiple incidents from one unified solution. We're going to get into what D-Land is doing today, actually. With roughly 1 million viewers each year, so a lot of people, the Super Bowl is the most iconic American sports event. And, people always talk about the fact to have Monday after be a holiday and stuff like this because so many people watch it. Also, it's worldwide, so it's amazing. So it becomes a highly sought after event. What I mean by that is could things go wrong? And last year's Super Bowl was hosted by the City of Inglewood, Los Angeles, Los Angeles County. And today I have with me the guy who, on the emergency management side of things, was coordinating for the City of Inglewood. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Todd, for having me. It's greatly appreciated.
Yeah, we've been talking about your role and what you're doing, and the Super Bowl in general, the impact that it had on your city, and then some of the technologies that you use. But let's just kind of roll back to the beginning when pens and paper. When you guys knew that you were getting the Super Bowl, when did the planning really start?
Well, essentially, focusing more on D-Land. First, I want to actually, if I could start off and say, I want to give definitely deep thanks to our city mayor and the city council for actually creating the environment to allow the city to support the Super Bowl. Our leadership actually created a connection to allow the SoFi Stadium to be built in that area, which then again followed on with the actual Super Bowl being held there. We're also hosting the World Cup and the Olympics in 2028. So many thanks for our leadership. Continuing on, I came on board City of Inglewood in August timeframe. In April, the city was starting communications with D-Land and the actual county group as far as the use of D-Land, but in a IMT, IEP type of response format, as that's like the easiest format to kind of get like a idea how to utilize this system and how to actually operate it in the best way possible. Once we started that, we were able to understand essentially the strengths and weaknesses, which the weaknesses of course were very small and they were very easy to either supplement or fix. But we started in earnest, say in September, when we shifted from that IMT IEP format and went to a strict EOC format. And that was a bit of a pretty big shift because we went from response now to management. And when we have a big event and using D-Land for the very first time, the city was using D-Land for the very first time. And the first time we were going to use it was for the Super Bowl. We had a pretty big learning curve, not only for the platform itself, but as this was our very first Super Bowl, we had to really kind of run it on the fly to understand what conditions were needed to actually exist to support the Super Bowl successfully. In my own personal experience, it's never the shark problems, those big problems that really frighten me or even dissuades me from anything at all. It's those piranha problems. It's those small problems that actually create failure. Because a big shark problem you can see from a mile away, but the small ones that nibble away are the ones that we're actually trying to correct and make sure it worked for our event. So one of the biggest things is, in my opinion, is that you can have a great system. You can have a system that has all the flashing lights and bells, but if there's a lack of communication and a common communication lane for all agencies that are participating to where information can flow from top to bottom easily and cleanly, and then you don't really have a successful management system. Fortunately, DLAN worked greatly and very detailed with us as far as working with to ensure all the agencies, I mean all the agencies, that's going to be local, county, state, federal, schools, private, nonprofits, to ensure that we actually were able to understand what entity needed to be observers in the system and what entities needed to be creators in the system. And also, in addition to that, to make sure that operated, once we got that list working with DLAN in the city, we actually went out and we trained all these agencies and how to use it, because identifying them is half the battle. Having them trained and having them to be able to operate and feel comfortable with the system was quite important to make sure that we were successful, not only for the Super Bowl, but maybe it wasn't mentioned, but 11 days prior to, there was like a variety of events that were occurring all throughout LA City in support of the festivities, essentially, of Super Bowl. And so we ensured that everyone was in DLAN that had to be in DLAN. We ensured that there was training for everyone that was in DLAN. We ensured that there is a level of comfort from all of the agencies that were in DLAN, so they felt comfortable in creating information and also creating agency reports and sit reps and things like that. So in addition to that, just to put a little side note on this, so you don't think that we're like solely focused on working on DLAN, the city was also creating their EOC. When I mean creating, I mean building their EOC from scratch, starting in September. At the same time, we actually start to generate some forward way with DLAN. So we were literally using an underutilized room in the sub-basement in the city hall, building out an EOC, carving out 3 rooms actually. And we're in certain technology, tracking the project, and we actually got the EOC up and running in 5 months while we're doing that. In addition, just to understand what else is going on, because this is a very new situation for me, because I never had so many things going on at the same time. Some are related to the game itself, and others related to like projects and like just like construction and such like that. But the city and the City OES team did an awesome job in making sure somehow everything flowed together and was successfully completed by the time the main event started. And so, if I may continue.
Please.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we also we were part of the operations committee. And so more like the leader, actually, we actually created the actual command structure, how we were going to operate during game day. There is like 23 agencies involved with this. And to support the agencies, we actually created a thing called a JOC, which is a Joint Operations Center. That's where all the agencies form up. And that was created on the 2nd of February. And we also created a JIC, again, in the senior center with all the agencies, including SoFi and the NFL. We also had a human trafficking location also in the senior center. And we also had an emergency communications team, Verizon and things like that, to ensure we had emergency comms throughout. The senior center was very, very an opportune place. It was built in 2018, so it was brand new, had all the appropriate support infrastructure to support all these teams. And also we had 2 5G cell towers right next to each other, right next to it. So we're able to really, really lean on that for a bit. In addition, just as a little bit of a good news for this, even though we had all these people inside of our senior center from first level to the 2nd level, and there for 11 days, essentially, 24/7, not a single case of COVID occurred for any agency attendant. That's due to the fact that the city took very, very extreme cautions, including putting air purifiers in every room, ensuring that there was spacing, ensuring there was temperature checks, ensuring that there was locations where people could go outside on the roof and actually get some more clean air. And so I think even though the big focus is going to be, DLAN, Super Bowl, I think this is probably our biggest victory, having that many people in one location. And because of our precautions, not a single case of COVID, no one came back sick. So it was definitely a success up and down the ladder.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially when you're, pulling so many people together and that was like one of the things we talked about before is that, EOC's opened up and people, and then your entire team was sick. That is an amazing stat right there. So as you're preparing and I want to kind of get into like your conversations that you had, because I mean, there's a lot of times with agencies build silos or they don't work well together. You know, the FBI doesn't really care what Inglewood PD is doing and compared to what the security for NFL is doing. How did you break down those silos and get everybody to kind of work in the same sandbox?
Well, we knew it was a very large event, and what we wanted to do is to ensure that we had a zero communication obstructions and blockages for this event. And so we presented DLAN as the best avenue for communication. This was done by pointing out how everyone had their own internal type of emergency software, whether it was WebEOC, NCS4, NCS, VOCI, Rave, all these other systems that they were utilizing, which were great individually for those agencies. But we told them, for this event, we're going to have to work as a family. We're going to have to work as a team, be very collaborative, and we actually made a great argument. And also DLAN team also helped out with that greatly. So every time we had a call with these agencies, DLAN was right there and was able to answer the more technical questions that came up. And so we were able to utilize DLAN as a communication tool by not infringing on those locations that were using those ideas. We're not advocating to replace their system. We were advocating to use this as a backbone for communication to the EOC and to the JOC and to the JIC. And so once that was understood that it was a backbone and not a replacement, then there is more acceptance.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question that came in, and not necessarily in your wheelhouse, but I know that you probably had to deal with at least planning for it. And he was talking about drone technology and illegal flights and how is that being addressed? And then also, could more larger drones carry explosives and stuff like that? But what did you guys do for that outside security? And how are you guys tracking events that were going on that were maybe potential issues?
Well, that's a great question, and this was before the Ukraine war, where drones are being utilized in a great number. And so again, with DLAN, we worked with our outside federal agencies, and we were able to put a drone module in there to where we could track the drones on a map. So essentially, what would come in, we'd get a call from either FAA or from the field units on the ground, and they would actually tell us that a drone was in this area, and we would take that information and we would put it into DLAN on a map where everybody could see where the actual drones are located. And doing so, we were able to actually historically visualize where the majority of the drones were taking off from or landing. And that right now gives us like a better idea where to place additional law enforcement in the event of a large event like the NCAA championship or the Olympics or the World Cup. So now we know like primarily where they're going. So that was all addressed in DLAN. It was actually one of the most busy parts essentially for the Super Bowl. It was pretty much quiet except for that part. There's drones everywhere. It was pretty incredible. I didn't think it'd actually be that intense, but majority of the calls were just drones. And so our JS team, or in our planning section, was very busy and posting and plotting all of those. And we saw that maybe in the future, this may be an issue for the event, especially like after the Ukraine war, and now drones are a lot more popular of use. And also it also presented with the Ukraine war, it kind of presents like a new aspect of the danger of drones now. Now we see, Ukraine war where they're actually using drones, they're actually weaponizing them, using drop munitions. And so now that we see how to track them through DLAN, now we see, how SoFi is tracking them. Now we know that they're an actual, like a real danger, not just a nuisance. And so now there's going to be a bit more focus on drones versus before, as they were just some type of personal toy that was just wanting to get a better look for their maybe social media channels and such.
Right. You know, kind of thinking about like that with drones, and the reason why the segues there, because I saw drone footage of the parades and the celebrations. I'm putting those in air quotes for those that can't see. I was talking, Keith and I actually yesterday were talking to somebody from New Zealand, and we're saying, hey, when our teams win over here, we tend to celebrate by breaking things and burning things down. And you had the luxury of having a Los Angeles team playing, you know, the home team literally playing the Super Bowl in their home stadium. What was planning for those celebratory, I don't say violence, but celebratory destruction, like?
Well, actually, we're quite grateful to have very, very competent partners in the way of law enforcement, and also LA Metro played a big key as they were busing people. The whole idea was for a Super Bowl, our main parking location was at LAX parking locations, and so we didn't have any parking on the actual SoFi property itself. So they'd come in, bus in, bus out. So in that way, it was very good. Our law enforcement was quite excellent. They ensured a flow of traffic, and also our traffic people here in the city. They ensured, you know, that the actual lanes were secured. And also before that, of course, everything requires pre-planning. So Inglewood law enforcement also, this was like months before the actual event itself, worked with a traffic company to actually indicate like where they're going to actually put the blockades, what lanes will be secured. And that was all, just to go back to D-Land, everything's going to rotate essentially around D-Land, because this is that really was our primary, the whole event was a primary point of communication. And so we were able to, the traffic plans came in a PDF format, but we were able to digitize it using our GIS team into D-Land itself and our mapping. And so that way we were able to see, also using Living Atlas, which is a way to track live traffic, and also using the camera feeds that were fed in through our police and public works side, we're able to indicate exactly where the traffic clogs were, where there's congregations, because that was all being fed in from the police department into D-Land as well. For instance, just to show like how D-Land helped us as far as deconflicting situations like breaking down goalposts. We had a situation where a bus was being accosted essentially by some over-enthusiastic winners. However, we did have LA Metro emergency manager inside of our own EOC, and we had the cameras up from Public Works through D-Land. He was able to see right away when that was occurring. When someone called him, we were able to direct the camera to that site. And from that, he actually called his people, and his people had the police there. It must have been almost under a minute. And that was deconflicted because we're able to not only communicate through D-Land, but also visualize the problem and also communicate out to the problem and solve the problem. And there with a very, very small impact on the transportation of our mostly calm spectators back to their parking units.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see a lot of reports on anything, so that you guys all did a great job on keeping that, and no one ripping down goalposts and throwing them into the LA River, right? Like, so I'm going to ask this question in a weird way for you, because it seems like the Super Bowl, we always use the Super Bowl of this, the Super Bowl of that, right? But was the Super Bowl truly like a dress rehearsal for what you guys are planning for the Olympics and things?
Dress rehearsal. I'm not sure if I would use that term per se. I would more say that it was an introduction versus a dress rehearsal, because this is the first time we used D-Land in any event. So, and also this was the first time we actually had like for Inglewood, like a joint operations center where we're dealing with like 23 plus agencies. And so some of these events, this was like a SEER level 1 event. So I know for some of these other events are not going to be at that level, even though the level of importance isn't any different. But for, I think every large event is going to have its own set of challenges. Even though we can learn from what we did in Super Bowl, We definitely have a much better understanding on how DLAN operates and works. Because when we first did this, September was when we actually first in earnest started to use DLAN. And so fortunately, running back to DLAN here, BCG actually sent out several teams. This was critical, actually. They sent out several teams to the JOC, the JIC, the airport, and also have like portable teams where they could actually go if there's a question concerning DLAN. And so while the first 11 days when we were supporting events in LA, DLAN was actually on site, and they're actually a flyaway team essentially. So just say if the airport had a situation where they didn't understand or they couldn't log in or they couldn't actually put their data in, they would actually drive out there and go over their shoulder and do a hand tap on their shoulder and actually help them through that process. And so DLAN flyaway teams were all over the city, whether it was a Morningside where we had all of our equipment, or it was over in the FBI building or the FCC side or the JIC. They were everywhere, ensuring, even though this was a new system for everyone, ensuring that there was a understanding on how it operated. And that was, I believe that was our actual dry run, or not a dry. What was the word you said?
I said dress rehearsal. Yeah,
that was our dress rehearsal right there.
Okay.
Our 11 days prior to the big event.
That's fair. That's fair. I was just thinking about like what of a big a stage it's going to be when the Olympics are here, and then of course you said you had the World Cup coming, and then the building of the new basketball arena where the Clippers are going to play. Correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So that's I mean, Little Inglewood is no longer Little Inglewood anymore. It's going to be it's going to be just as a par with downtown LA, huh?
I wouldn't say at par. I would probably say a little higher.
well played. Absolutely. A question came in that goes with the funding and efforts to allow multi-agency radio communications, how to interact with many EM softwares like WebUC. So does DLAN interact with other softwares?
Well, we have an API to them. So that's what happened. So we weren't able to, every software such like that is going to be its own island. That's why it was so important to utilize DLAN as a back channel for everything. And so we were given APIs to access some of these sites, like for the VOCs and the WebUCs, but primarily the communication was through DLAN.
Right, that would make sense. So now that you have the Super Bowl underneath your belt, right, and the planning, are you using? And the reason why I said dress rehearsal, are you using those lessons learned for planning for other events within the city? What did you take away personally as an emergency manager that makes you a better, faster, stronger EM from working a large event like the Super Bowl?
Well, one of the biggest things I took away from this was communication is key. Without communication, without an ability to ensure everyone's in the same channel, there's going to be failure. It doesn't have to be an actual large event to make it fail, or a small event, but if there is not like a single channel where everybody can communicate and have a voice, have input, there's definitely going to be failure in this. It was clear to me, obviously, as an emergency manager, that communication was important, but it was never so deeply demonstrated than what was demonstrated during the Super Bowl. I mean, the only way, in my opinion, that this proved to be so successful was the fact that we were able to use DLAN as a back channel, and then everybody was able to communicate through DLAN, submit agency reports so everyone knew what was going on, and also with the sit rep and such like that. So that's from the state, federal, everyone. So everyone knew what was going on. There was no silos. There was no voids in communication. There was no misunderstanding as far as actions taken. DLAN provided that back channel to where everyone knew what was going on at the same time, and that took away the possibility of having a Tower of Babel and made everyone speak in one voice.
That's critical. Now, I always joke, like, when you do an after action report, there's those first three items seem to always pop up. Did you not have communications as a problem then on your after action report?
As a problem, no. It's more like DLAN was a solution.
Awesome. A user asked, or a listener asked, how do you try to? Well, D-Land is a product, so how do you try D-Land with a foreign EM? I'm not really sure what that means. I don't know if you can digest that. Do you mean with other users of emergency management, or do you mean foreign, like as in foreign nations? I'm not positive, but I'm not questioning. If you want to try to take a stab at it, Keith.
Oh yeah, the biggest thing about D-Land is the book's strength, I believe, is ability to be able to source out to other agencies. So just say if someone was a foreign, not a foreign agent, but someone who had a foreign EM, say even in New Zealand, say, we could actually provide that person an account and limit his access to whatever channels they want him to see. Just say if you wanted him to see just the FAC, the Family Assistance Center module, to see like how we're flowing in people in from like an event at the SoFi Stadium, that we could actually provide that person a guest account to say, and have them either visualize or create content in that channel. So that's the biggest thing about D-Land. It's like so easily transported to any agency, whether you're in Japan, whether you're in New Zealand, whether you're in Mars, essentially on the space station. So we can do that. So it's very, very versatile in that way.
And they clarified, say they're talking about the Olympics and emergency managers coming over with the teams and whatnot with the Olympics. It's actually a good question as far as like how you use it with foreign entities coming in for the Olympics, and I think you answered it. So thanks for that, and thank you, listener. I don't have your name, sorry, because it just says Facebook user. For that question, that's actually a solid question. You know, we're getting here close to the end, and just could you give me like those 3 lessons learned that you took away from the Super Bowl experience?
Well, actually, this whole success was completed by good leadership, good people, good partnerships, strong committed and dedication, good resources, experienced and talented folks across all the agencies, and a commitment and security to our region. I think that was, if I can sum it up, those 3 questions that you had in that statement, essentially it was a team effort, and the urgency to ensure that this was a safe event really played a huge part as far as making this a success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like all the reports I've seen, everything, it was just so smooth from outside the agency, from outside looking in, and I'm hoping that was the same feeling that you had from the inside looking out. That you guys did a great job, and I really commend you and the team and everybody who had anything to do with working the Super Bowl event this year. And I'm sure we'll have more of them, and I'm sure we'll have more big events coming hitting that area. I know it's doing nothing but growing where you're at, you know, I think that's just an amazing thing that you guys are doing. And Keith, keep up the great work.
It's definitely a team effort.
All right, Keith, thank you so much for your time. And we got to do this again. Talk about a little bit other things that you're working on, especially with that the I don't want to say PowerPoint presentation because way more than that. But with that map, story maps are amazing. If you guys haven't heard of story maps, you guys reach out to Keith, find out about story maps. His contact information is in the show notes below. And Keith, thank you so much. Until next time, let's talk again.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. I know that, you know, you have places to go and things to do, but sharing information, just like what we learned from Keith and what they did with the Super Bowl, I think makes us all better at what we do in our job. You know, we have the Halloween coming up for everyone. I hope that everybody's staying safe in that Halloween space. And if you thought this information was great and you could use it for Halloween planning, use it for sure. But hey, also go to your favorite podcast player, give us some 5 stars, and share this with your colleagues or friends. And until next time, everybody, please stay safe and stay hydrated.